We're back to the Neil Haley Show. I'm excited to welcome to the program David Hollenbach of Hollenbach Leadership. David, how are you? I am so impressed when it comes to your leadership, especially when you were at the fire department. How many people, first of all, and then I'm going to ask questions, because I had a great client on, Dean Koontz, who's a marketing coach, and she really talks about marketing to make businesses profitable. When it comes to you, I want to pick your brain on how to lead a team, because you led a very big team and you had responsibilities galore when it came to that. Operations is something that so many businesses miss that cause them to not be profitable. And then having people that work for you just to up and quit, decide they're not going to come to work the next day. But let's kind of just talk about how many people did you supervise, first of all, in your job when you were in the fire department?
Well, when I was the chief of special operations, and granted, this was a very large metropolitan fire department. So the special operations section of the department consisted of, truck companies, the dive team, our, it's technical rescue. There's like 6 disciplines for technical rescue, where it's like rope rescue, confined space, structural collapse, vehicle machinery rescue, high angle rescue. So there's all these aspects of special operations, and it was spread out across the county so that we could have resources, anywhere in the county relatively quick. So I want to say at its peak, there's probably around 200, 300 personnel that fell under the special operations umbrella, that I was responsible for making sure they had all their training, all their equipment, making sure that they were up on all of their training, the technical skills and all that jazz. So, and their certifications.
200 to 300 people. How many of those did you end up hiring?
Well, so the department consisted of about 1,500. I think there's more now, but it was about 1,500 personnel. So there was a selection process to get into special operations, and it was different levels, right? A diver didn't necessarily need to be high angle rescuer. And,
right.
We've got the second largest Ferris wheel in the country in Orlando, and I was responsible for developing that rescue plan. Should a helicopter crash into it or something like that, how would we get people down? We needed to have the right personnel for that job. So you really had to know the people, and you would get recommendations, right? This person is pretty high speed. Well, you take a look at them, and then you would start investing money in their training. And once they had all of their training, then you would put them through selection, where there would be written tests, physical tests, and then a panel interview where you would kind of put them under pressure and ask them technical questions. If they were the sole operator on this particular scene, what would their decision-making process be? So there was it was a great process that we developed shortly after I took over special ops. Now, from there, I did 3 years in that position, and then I went out into just regular operations, where I managed 6 fire stations, and I believe the number was 91 personnel that I had assigned to my battalion. And so that was, again, training, the equipment, just making sure that the staffing was correct, managing discipline and all of that.
How many of them did you on a regular basis in communication with?
Well, when I was the chief of special operations, that position was a little more difficult, in that there were so many people. Mostly I had to just communicate with the officers and rely on their assessment of the people that they were leading. So I would get information from them and, see who needed additional training, who needed support, who was struggling in their personal life. How could I assist them in that? So that was that role. Now, when I was responsible for the 6 fire stations, my goal every shift was to visit each fire station. And, some of the busier stations, they wouldn't see the fire station. They would just be running from call to call. So I would have to, just get into their area and go to one of their calls and then talk to them. I would try and talk to everybody, because you want to get to know your people, know their strengths, their weaknesses, what their goals are, what they're hoping to accomplish in the role that they're in, and how can I facilitate their success. And so that was the piece. Like, you have to talk to your people regularly in order to get to know them, what makes them tick, and really develop that trust, because without trust, without effective communication, leadership is going to be lacking.
Totally. Wow. And so that's so interesting. Let's talk about your experience when it came to hiring people. How many people did you hire in those roles?
Well, I wasn't responsible for hiring. This is a large fire department with county human resources. We would make suggestions, how to develop, recruit firefighters, that sort of thing. We would constantly evaluate them in their first year to make sure that they're hitting all the benchmarks.
So you're more in the evaluation process once they're hired to see if they're right or not.
Right. Yeah. Now, in other roles, because I've owned a few companies where I had to hire people, and that's a little more difficult because these were manual labor jobs, roofing, rain gutters, that sort of thing. So while you want them to have some mechanical skills, you also want to make sure that they're not afraid of heights. And you want them to be hard workers. So I found that once you get them on, they might let you believe that they're a harder worker than they really are, and you won't find out until a couple weeks after they've been working for you. And if their production decreases, you got to find out what that is. It might just be some personal issues. It might be that they're feeling like they're not getting paid enough. Whatever the issue, I would want to develop a personal relationship with them, and develop that trust. So there was open communication, and I could go to them and have a candid conversation about their performance without, hurting their feelings or getting them wound up to the point where they're like, oh, I'm going to take my tools and go home. I've had that before.
Wow.
So,
and how do you kind of read, let's talk in hiring as a leader, if they're going to be the right person to work for you?
It's very, very difficult, I think, unless you do an extensive interview process and skills evaluation, that kind of thing. That's how you, in a larger organization, how you could weed people out. But for a small organization, it's difficult because, there are unscrupulous people out there that will lie to you just to get a job and really don't have the skills to perform it. And when you find that out, you got to get rid of them.
All right. So we can talk about firing, evaluating if your team's going the right direction. What did you look at the fire department? how you knew they were on the right track?
One big thing was, are they training on their own, or do I have to tell them to train? You know, they're responsible for being as high speed as possible so that when they get dispatched to a call, when they get dispatched to an emergency to save somebody's life, they're on their game. And you have to train constantly for the myriad of emergencies that are out there. You know, anything from water rescue, hazardous materials, fires, auto accidents, machinery accidents, structural collapse, building collapses, bridge collapses. There's so many horrible things that can happen, that can hurt people, kill people, and the fire department, the police department, they're the ones that need to be up on those skills. So that was one of the big things, was, are they training without me telling them to do it?
Totally. Wow. It's quite interesting, David, when you look at those things, look at the development, look at their growth, and figure out, are they in the right track or not? And the assessment's tough, especially in that industry, right? Because you're relying on your team on the ground to make sure they're assessing, they're growing.
Yeah, and there's always the people that are good with where they're at right now. They don't want any additional responsibility. They don't want to go to any additional training. They'll do the bare minimum. They're a reliable employee, but they're not going to be a superstar. And then you've got the people that will undermine your efforts to create an amazing team. And sometimes you don't find out about it until a lot of damage has been done. And then there's the superstars that they're not looking for credit or anything like that. They just want to be as badass as possible. And they will go, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I feel like I led by example in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways was, I would take vacation to go to training across the country, high level technical training through Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, whatever it is. There's some really amazing training that has been provided that I've been able to partake in. And when people that were in my battalion needed time off to go to training, I would try and find a way to help them not use their own personal time. But sometimes you just have to encourage them to, get time trades or take vacation.
All right. Best place to go is hollenbachleadership.com, David. Appreciate it. Great information. And thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right. You're listening, watching the Neil Haley Show. We'll be back in just a moment.